actually have a whole thing later on when we talk about predictions where I'm like, love triangle, but it made sense to talk about it here because it's gonna happen. No questions about it. If you've read any young adult book at this point, you see it coming a mile away. We saw it coming the moment Cell walked in with his shadow powers, right? We know these characters. We get it.
Stephanie Meyer, you raised us.
We are children of what you've done. You raised us. Hello, and welcome to the Fangirl Feels podcast. I'm here with my co-host Tanya.
Hello.
And I'm Olivia, and we're the Fangirl Feels podcast, where we are two friends who dish about all the books, movies, shows that we're obsessed with. And if you're here, you can see from the title that we are in the middle of our read-along of Legendborn Part 2. So we're going to do a deep dive of that today. But before we do that, we like to do a little Fangirl Finds, where we talk about all the things that we've been reading, watching this week. So, Tanya, what have you been into this week?
Well, I just want to point out, if you are watching the video on YouTube, which you should, subscribe to us. Thank you. I look a little different. I'm getting my headshot done today, and so I have like these curlers in my hair, and I covered it with a scarf. And I think it actually looks fine. And so I just want to point it out. But every time I do, thank you. Every time I do a comedy show, they ask for like, hey, give us your headshots for like promo. And like every time it's just a screenshot I've taken of a video from my performances, and it's that I've just like edited it to look normal. And now I need an actual professional one. So that's what I'm doing today. So that is something I will be doing. But what I have been into recently, I've been watching Bodkin on Netflix, and it's very good. It's a murder mystery, a whodunit, and it's set in Ireland. And so you have the great accent of Irish people in the show that helps. And then like the moody kind of dark tones visually. And it's really popular on Netflix. So I'm sure if you haven't seen it, you will be hearing about it soon.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it, but sounds interesting. Again, you're always on a different plane of like what you watch. I'm never in the same universe as you.
Our universes don't touch. I mostly watch like mysteries and horror films and shows, so we're never aligned. But then suddenly this week we'll be watching Bridgerton together. Our worlds collide. So
yes, they do collide. This year, this is another year in which there's like an eclipse of our interests. You know, like it doesn't happen all the time. An aurora, of our interests. That doesn't happen. It happens once in a blue moon.
I love what you're doing here. Keep going.
Do you see it? Do you get it? Do you get what I'm trying to do here? Yeah, Bridgerton season 3 starts, I think, on Thursday. I think that's what it was. I think it's on Thursday, which will have already come out by the time this episode comes out. And that will actually be what our next episode will be about. So if you watch Bridgerton season 3, part 1, come back here for our discussion of it, because we will have lots to say. I actually haven't watched any trailer yet. Have you watched the trailers?
No, I've just been seeing all their press. They've been doing great press, and we've been witnessing the glow up, and which they purposefully do. They won't have them glow up until their season, so everyone's like, "Wow!"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same. The actor, what's his name? Colin. That's not his actor name. That's his character name. But he looks really good, and I did not think he looked that great in the other episodes. But that was the same with Anthony also.
That's true. I didn't have any feelings for him, and then like that season, I was like, "Whoa, Anthony, where were you?"
It's like, husband? Is that my husband right there?
Am I Kate Sharma suddenly?
I mean, you could be. You quite literally could be.
I could never. She's gorgeous. Look at me. I'm just kidding.
You're gorgeous too. What are you talking about? I mean, you should be here for like Halloween or something with James.
Oh, that's true.
Anthony.
This is a good idea. Yeah, I want the like dresses, the Regency dresses. So.
Me too. Don't we all?
Yes.
Fashion is really downgraded a lot for us. But granted, I like pants, so
pants were a good invention, I think.
They were. I'm not upset about that. But this year, there's also a lot of shit. This is like this is 2022 part 2, because we have Bridgerton's coming back. We have House of the Dragon coming back later this year. And I just saw this morning Rings of Power is coming out August 29th or something like that.
I didn't even see that one. That's cool. I love
Yeah,
that show. Can't wait.
me too. So it's like 2022 part 2. Like we're back. All these shows are on these like 2-year, you know, sequences. So it will be back
The
this
kids are
year.
saying a phrase that's "we're so back." I don't know where it started, but I guess we're so
We're,
back, everyone.
we're so back. I don't get it. I mean, I get
You
it.
haven't have you seen it?
No. What is I mean, I get the phrase, I
Jen
guess, but
Right. Yeah, it logically makes sense, but out of nowhere, like I just saw like the people just start saying it this is so back. We're so back. We're
we're
so
so
back.
back.
And in any context, and I saw like people use it for their companies use it for their marketing, and so now it's dead. But
Oh. Oh yeah. Once it's become an advertising, it's over.
yeah,
Yeah. We're so
so
back.
we're so back.
Well, we're so back. Now it's officially over because we've said it.
Now we said it. So now it's dead. Sorry,
Yeah.
everyone. Chugi. But speaking of shows coming back, I know that you've recently been watching a show that we both love, especially specific character.
Oh yes. I've been watching Abbott Elementary. I always forget to mention it because it's been going on for like the season's been airing for a while and it airs every week, like an episode. I think on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I don't know exactly. I tend to watch it over the weekend. But great show. Good season. Do you know anything about this season of Abbott Elementary or no? Because I
No,
don't
I
want to
haven't
spoil it.
even. I think I faintly remember it coming back, and but then I didn't watch like any trailers or anything. But I want to. It's a good show. I just haven't. But
Yeah.
yeah, what's been going on?
Well, I don't want to spoil. I don't want to spoil anything. So I don't know what I can say. But if you know, you know. The Gregory Janine stuff this season has been interesting. I'll just say that. Drama.
We love Gregory Eddy. If you watch our fictional boyfriend March Madness, he got pretty far. He got pretty far.
He
I mean, it
did.
makes sense. He's a handsome dude and he's pretty nice.
He is nice. He's also very stupid sometimes, as proven by this season. But we like him. He tries his best. You know,
He's trying his best. That's what counts.
it's what counts. It's true. But it's been fun. I think it'll be done soon. I think it'll end by the summer. So the last episode I just watched was about Mother's Day. So I think, and they're like talking about the end of the school year. So I think it will end, in a few weeks or so with the end of the school year, quote unquote. So yeah. I also learned in an interview with Keemta Brunson that the name of the show is actually based off of her old like elementary school teacher. She had a teacher named Miss Abbott or something. Like that's so cute.
It is so cute. I love how like closely like she took from her real life. Like I
Yeah,
think that was super smart on her part.
it is. It's very cute. Very sweet. What a like teachers do matter. They make a difference.
They do.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Pay them more.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But that's really it. That's all I'm watching. Besides these anticipation of all these other things. Oh, well, I guess I can mention this. I watched Taylor Swift in Paris because she added a whole new set to the Eras tour. I don't know if you saw any of this. I'm on the Swifty side of the internet, so
I get my news through you. So anything
Mhm.
you know, I know now.
Yes. Well, that's breaking news in the Taylor Swift world. She added a whole new set, the Tortured Poets department, to the Eras tour. She sang like 5 songs. Amazing.
Whoa. Wait, so how did you watch it? Was there like someone illegally live streaming?
Oh, there's so many live streams. I didn't actually watch a live stream. I just saw like live posts, like tweets and stuff. And then I watched the videos later. They like, came on my TikTok. But people watch the live streams. Like, people will be there live streaming on TikTok
Yeah.
and they'll be watching it.
Appreciate these people. That's how I watched the Beyonce concerts last year too. I'm like, thank
Yeah.
you. They got taken down immediately, like if they were like on YouTube, but I'm like, thank you.
Really? I don't think the Taylor Swift ones get taken down.
Oh,
I think
really?
they're there, yeah. But again, I don't watch the live streams. No, I just watch the clips later. People expected that she would add Tortured Poets to the Eras tour, but I was just surprised also. I'm like, she changed up a lot of the sets to add this whole new era, basically. So it's kind of like it's not a new tour, but it's definitely it's a different show.
That's really cool. And you're going to be seeing her again this year?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rest in peace.
Rip.
Unless I have some miracle that I get tickets basically handed to me like I did last time, unlikely that I'll get tickets. And there's only one show. The Indianapolis show is the one that's closest to me, and it's during like a really inconvenient time. So we'll see.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Rip.
Rip.
So now we're ready to discuss. We're heading into Legendborn Part 2. We've been reading Part 1 last week. You can see that if you haven't. If you're just reading along with us now, go back to that last episode. This is Part 2. This is chapters 10 through 25, which was a larger chunk than Part 1. Part 1 was just 9 chapters. Our schedule is we'll be doing this part is today, Friday, May 17th. And then we're taking a break, like we said. We're going to talk Bridgerton next week. And then we'll be back with Bridgerton not Bridgerton, Legendborn Part 3 on May 13th. And then Legendborn Part 4 on June 7th, which we're hoping to do a live show, but we'll see, depending on interest. If you have any questions or comments or anything you want to send us, it's at fangirlfeelspod@gmail.com. You can reach out to us there. On to the discussion of this part of Legendborn. So a lot happens here. So I kind of have like a summary of the different chapters and things we can discuss. So where we left off last episode or in the last part is that Nick agrees to take on his title again and like sponsor Bree as his page, which I still don't fully understand what that means. Do you really understand what that means?
I struggled with this part with all of the terms that pop up. But
Yes.
yeah, page, squire, all of those. I'm like, okay, where are those in like the order? But
yeah, I'm like, I don't know enough about like medieval knighthood to like fully understand. I need to like see this played out, honestly. But so that was where we ended in the last part. So Bree signs up to agree to be part of these trials, to become a squire, and she meets a bunch of different people with like a lot of names come up during this time. A Felicity, a Greer who is non-binary. We meet our first non-binary character in this book. I was about to say show in this book, and a few other people. But Nick tells her specifically to keep a low profile and not make herself a big deal in this competition, which we learn later as to why. They take an oath of fealty in the order in the woods, and that's there where she learns that Nick is actually a descendant from the legendary King Arthur. Did you expect this? I did not, I'll be honest.
I don't think I did. No.
No. No. No, I didn't. I didn't either. But like I said in the last one, I'm suspicious of him. I was suspicious of him, and I'm gonna say that this is why. Because I'm no longer like suspicious of him. I think he's fine. But maybe this is why.
I am suspicious of him for a reason that we'll bring up towards the end of this episode.
Oh, okay. Our suspicions have flipped a little bit.
Yes, I know. And keep listening. I'm suspicious of someone else too. And we're gonna be talking about them pretty soon. So
drama. Okay. Drama. I'm no longer suspicious of him. I think there's more to it. But yeah, okay. Okay, we'll get to that. That's exciting. So one of the big points here is like Nick agreeing to sponsor Bree as a page is nearly unheard of. And she gets a lot of stares and whispers as she's like walking through this lodge. It's because most pages come from vassal families who have pledged themselves to the order. And so people are suspicious of her for skipping the line. And Nick explains that these vassal families are outsiders who sworn to the code and are order at large, and they pledge service to these Legendborn bloodlines. And they know about like the Shadowborn and the Ether, but they don't fight in this war. And they use their knowledge to gain power and are oftentimes very like high up officials, like in government, CEOs, officials, cabinet members, and even presidents. So you can imagine she stands out because she is not part of these like important families that have been embedded in the order for so many years. I liked this. I thought this was interesting. You see this done in a lot of like fantasy stories where they're able to blend this idea of like power in government with this like, secret fantasy world. I think we see this a lot even today with a lot of conspiracy theories, right? Where you have like the QAnons who think that there's some like higher government power that's controlling everybody. So this plays on that kind of idea that there are like this like looming group of people that actually know more and control government. How did
The
you feel about this?
Illuminati
The
too.
Illuminati, yeah. Like we're obsessed with this idea. And so you see this a lot in like fantasy stories too.
Yeah. I like how she's building out the universe, like with that. You know what I mean? Like the dots are connecting, the Venn diagrams are being drawn. I thought it was a lot of information being thrown at us at once. How did you feel about that?
It is like to what we were saying earlier. I'm like, I don't fully understand all of these terms like page, vassal, once born, shadowborn. I'm like, there's a lot of people being born right now. I don't fully get it, but I'm like I hope to be. I feel a little bit better about it than I did maybe in the last episode, but I'm like, I'm gonna learn by immersion. Just continue to use the terms, and I think I'll get it over time. But the
Yeah.
dumps can be a lot sometimes.
I thought it was interesting. She explained once born, the writer explained once born, like after she'd been using it for most of this book so far in these parts. I'm like, and this whole time I'm like, what does that mean? And she doesn't explain it until a couple chapters into this. But it's interesting because like I also like don't know much about like the Arthurian tales. So like just from like movies and things like that have talked about it, you know. I am waiting for if they bring up like the goblet, the what's it called?
The Holy Grail.
The Holy
The Holy
Grail.
Grail. Yeah.
I'm waiting for that to be brought up somehow. But
Yeah.
but anyways, I did have a question. I was curious, like, do you have an understanding of like who can manipulate ether? Is that just the Merlins, or is that people who are awakened? I know that comes later. We're gonna be discussing when that shows up in this, but I was confused about like who, like, cause Star Wars, right? There's midichlorians. Unless you have a certain amount of like midichlorians in your blood, you can't like manipulate the Force to become a Jedi. So I'm wondering, like, are people born into it, or like once you take the oath? Asking a lot of questions. Do you know any answers to those?
I get what you're asking. I'm assuming it is like you have to be part of these like bloodlines. Like you have to be, I guess, a Merlin, which again, I don't know much about like the tale of King Arthur either. And this is the first time I've ever really engaged with any story, yeah, besides like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is not a real story. That's a comedy. Um, well, also, did you ever see Merlin, the show Merlin? I think it was on the CW. Did you ever heard of
No,
this?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It was a thing. This was way back when. This was like, I want to say like this was back in the Tumblr days. So this would have been like 2012. And it was super popular back on Tumblr. So I know I never watched it, but I know a bit of it. And Merlin was like, I think Arthur's like right hand man, I guess. I don't know. Do you know who Merlin was?
From these stories and like folklore, you know, that's all I. But not I have not from that show's context. But that makes sense that he'd be the right hand man in that show, and then also in this book.
Yeah. So I think that's so I do think to answer your question, I think the Merlins, this race of Merlins, are the ones that can control ether. I don't know. I'm not sure. Don't quote me
Gotcha.
on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But we do learn later on that it's more to it than that. I do agree that this book relies us to know more about this legend than I've ever considered in my life. And it's not a legend that like we really engage with much in pop culture. Like there are certain legends or certain stories that like culturally we understand, especially a lot of like Greek mythology, I think is very embedded in our day to day. And so sometimes books don't have to over explain because they kind of expect you to know. Like Percy Jackson to some extent does that. But this, I'm like, I know nothing about King Arthur and then order or anything. So I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. Like it seemed more relevant when we were kids for some it was like in school. But I mean I did watch Green Knight with which was about the Sir Gawain
Yeah.
folklore story with Dave Patel, our husband.
Yeah.
But I mean I had to Google a lot for that one too. That was yeah, I guess it's not like information readily available versus like you said, like the Greek mythology, the Greek gods, like I know more about that's more I guess
relevant.
relevant and referenced.
Yeah, it's more just, I can't think of any other word, but embedded. It's like more embedded in our cultural zeitgeist than this. I know, again, only know, do coconuts migrate? Like, which is not a real thing.
If it weren't for that movie, to be honest,
Exactly.
Monty Python,
Monty
I would like
Python.
a lot of this information.
Exactly. And the Holy Grail. So that's interesting. So I mean, I think that's a good critique to some extent, like maybe a little bit, but there's that fine balance of like, how do you over-explain? How do you explain and how do you not over-explain? Which we were just talking about these info dumps sometimes being like, I don't understand. I don't know how to engage with this.
One more reference that references like Arthurian tales is the show called Mrs. Davis that I watched last year, where like the Holy Grail is involved. And it kind of has to do with AI a little bit. So like the future and the past mesh. It's a good show. Check it out.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. Also, I just briefly looked up King Arthur, according to legend, was a king of Britain. He is a folk hero and a central figure in medieval literary tradition. So he's briefly based off real life, but is mostly just legend. So point of this to say, it's interesting that it's like a British legend, but I don't feel like we're also children of immigrants, so that could be part of it. It's hard to say. I wonder if there was someone who's not a child of immigrants who was like, yeah, everyone knows the story of King Arthur. I'd be interested if that's the case. Let us know, listeners.
Yeah, like maybe your parents were talking about it. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it was just more obvious to them, and to us, we're just like, who's that? Who dat?
What are these terms? Yeah.
What are these terms? Well, I think some of these terms she made up, like the author made up, but like the legend of King Arthur as a whole, I'm not 100% familiar with. So I don't know. Anyway, okay, moving on. That was good discussion. So they're in the woods to take this oath of fealty, and Bree is able to resist this oath because Nick pinches her arm mid the oath taking. So they're holding hands across this like stone, and Bree's freaking out because she's like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to take this oath. And Nick pinches her arm, and this pain, as we've learned from the previous part, helps her resist this magic. It helped her resist Sel's mesmer, and it seems like it works to also resist this oath taking. And she doesn't want to take the oath because she does plan on betraying, not really being a part of the order. She's really only here to learn more about her mom. That's all she's interested in, and isn't really interested in like pledging fealty to this order. So why do you think pain helps her resist magic? Out of curiosity, do you have any ideas as to why you think pain?
Ooh, I'm curious if you have theories, because I wonder if it's going to be related to like her lineage and her mom. And that I'm not sure. Like at first I was like, it's probably like the amount of PTSD she has from like her life that is probably affecting her not succumbing to the mesmers. But how about you? What do you think?
I agree. I think it has something to do with her lineage, something to do with her, because we talked about this last episode. We're suspicious of her lineage to some extent, suspicious in a good way. Like we obviously think she's related to some extent. Yeah, I think maybe a PTSD, maybe it's just like a grounding thing, and she's already just has magic herself that's very powerful. So maybe the pain just helps activate it. I don't know.
That's a good question. Yeah, and I just love that like she never really talked about it with Nick, and he just knew. Like it was never like a discussion that it's confirmed that it was the pain. And then I had to read that part several times to be like, he's doing this on purpose, but they never talked about this. And I like went back in the book. So I'm like, that was a little weird to me, but maybe it was just like a suspicion they both had, they just never discussed.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't notice that she never like told him that. So that's a good eye.
Or like it was like their hypothesis that they never like confirmed in a conversation. And I was like,
Yeah.
What? You both just know about this? Okay.
Interesting. I wonder if that's just like a continuity thing, or if that's relevant. I don't know.
Or I could have missed it, to be honest. Yeah,
That's fair. Interesting. So after the oath ceremony, Felicity, one of these scions, we learned that the scions are the bloodlines of the original order of the Round Table. So you have to be between the ages of 16 to 22. So a scion is also known as an heir of each knight in each generation, and they have to be between the ages of 16 to 22. And we learn that Felicity she gets called by her knight as a hellhound attacks them during this ceremony. And this comes as a big surprise because she is, I believe, like third or fourth in the order, which we learn later on and we get explained later on. But Nick acts very surprised when this happens. A Yukol, which is a human-like demon, captures Bree in an attempt to lure Nick, asking for the Pendragon, whatever that means. Nick and a few others get hurt trying to defeat this demon, but both Bree and Sel manage to defeat it, and they all end up in the hospital getting healed from their wounds. So my question here is, again, I think related to my lack of knowledge of the King Arthur legend, is what is Pendragon? I've heard this term before, but do you know what this is?
No, I didn't. I again, like, that was one of the terms I had to like be like, okay, this is gonna just probably they'll explain it to us at some point. I hope so, at least.
I hope so too. I was like, what is Pendragon? Who is the Pendragon? I don't know what this is. I like how my notes are just right. What is Pendragon? What is this? I don't understand.
I just Googled what Pendragon is, and it is a term for King Arthur, and he was named the Pendragon after being inspired by a dragon-shaped comet. So there you have it, folks. We figured it out. But I don't know how that relates, and maybe there's a different like origin in this book. I don't know
Interesting.
if they explain it, but
So while they're all in the hospital and the infirmary getting patched up from their wounds, Sel bursts in and accuses Bree of being a demon and assisting this Yukol. But one of her friends, Sarah, that girl that we met earlier on in the lodge, defends her. But Sel is insistent that she's a demon or working with the demons, and this becomes a theme throughout the rest of this part as well. So why do we think Sel thinks this? I mean, I get why he thinks this, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's funny. I love how they're building him up to be obviously the enemies to lover, love interest. And I'm here for it. I love it so much. Although his accusations can be, rooted in racism, we're honestly not sure yet. And that part I'm like, ooh, he's going too hard with this. And I understand like he's super protective of the order and she just showed up versus like everyone else had to like wait in line. So I can totally understand. And like I think perhaps he notices aspects of her that like she thinks she's hiding. Like maybe it comes up like maybe he noticed the sparks that she has, or like the fact that she just keeps showing up when the Yukol or like the monsters show up. She's there. Like, how does she know? And of course it's coincidence that we know, but I understand why and I honestly would be too, why he's suspicious. Yeah. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. It's understandable why he is suspicious. I think this is I have this to talk about later, but it is very obvious. I mean, the moment we saw Sel, we're like, oh, this is the love interest, right? And it continues to be very obvious that he will be the love interest, because you don't mention a character being like painstakingly beautiful when you first meet them without them being some romantic love interest, which I did not know this was going to be a love triangle. And I suspect that this is going to be a love triangle book now. And I have my frustrations with love triangles, but for a lot of reasons. And actually part of it is because of this, like Sel is being a butt face to her and Nick is being very sweet. And I know myself and I'm toxic and I'm going to still prefer Sel. I'm still going to prefer him, even though he's mean. Why do I do this? When
Over
Nick is
and
so
over.
sweet.
The toxic man, the Darcys,
The problem.
the problems of the story.
It's such a problem. Like, why do we do this? Why? And this is these books are the problem.
Okay, let's talk about the love triangle because I think it is interesting. Again, not like either of our favorites tropes. We do typically like enemies to lovers because like the payoff is just so worth it. You know what I mean? Versus like I am getting suspicious, like Nick is coming on too hot, too strong. And that's making me suspicious of him. Like he's like kissing her knuckles, which I thought was cute. And like certain things, like if I was in Bree's position, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's texting me. He's also very hot and handsome. And he's like King Arthur. Oh my God. But I am suspicious because we find out as we keep reading that he wants to find a way for his mom to remember him. And I think he's going to use Bree, or at least he's feigning interest in Bree because she has been able to fight the Mesmers. And so I think he wants to use her, to be honest. And I think that's where the conflict will arise. I just keep trying to guess where the conflict will arise, where she turns to Sel eventually in this book.
Yeah. That's a good point. I completely forgot about his mom, but I totally agree with you. I'm not suspicious of him being bad. When I said that I was suspicious of him before, I was thinking like, oh, is he actually the villain? I'm no longer suspicious he's the villain. But yeah, I do agree that there's something that's going to go wrong with their relationship because you do not have a relationship start that early and it be the yeah, it's like I'm not even convinced that they're going to be quote unquote end game at this point, right? You don't have a relationship start that early and it work out by the end of the series. I just doubt that that's going to happen when you have an enemies to lovers blossoming right in front of your eyes, you know? So yeah, I that's interesting. I agree with you. I do think I totally forgot about his mom, but I could totally see that being the case. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're
It's
right.
like it's a part of his origin story for potentially maybe he goes mad. And you know what I mean? Like I just really think
Yeah,
like it's a big part of why he left the order and suddenly he meets a girl who like
can resist it.
can resist the mesmers. And I'm like, that's a huge just those facts are too important, you know?
Yeah, you're totally correct. I think you're totally right. Yeah, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna be like, there you go, Tanya. You got it.
We called
You're
it.
right. Called it. You called it. Yeah. I will be interested to see what makes the shift too. And like how will Cell also ultimately end up being on Team Bree because that will happen. It's going to happen. I just don't know how or why. And like I said, again, I'm going to be my toxic self and I'm going to prefer that him over Nick because I'm toxic. It sucks.
It's
And it's I don't know what else to say.
the burden we bear as fangirls.
True. Just always go for the toxic black-haired man. It's always the black hair. That's how you know. Against a blonde, never stood a chance.
He always smells of leather and cinnamon, you know?
Cinnamon.
That's what
Cinnamon.
does it.
That's true.
Red flags.
This the cinnamon. That's the red flag. That's how you know. Ugh.
We can
Crazy.
fix him.
No, really, I can. Taylor Swift reference. Just throw it in there.
Oh, which song?
I can fix him. No, really.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Yeah.
That's the song.
Which, by the way, I keep listening to. It just keeps showing up on repeat because I'll just have it playing when I'm like brushing my teeth and stuff. The I can do it with the broken heart.
Yeah.
It's just a fun. The girlies are saying written by gel pen. Oh no.
Glitter
Written
pen.
with the feather pen, but with gel ink.
Yes. Oh, I love that. With the feather pen with gel ink. That's cute. That's awesome. Yeah.
So it's like
sounds about
depressed.
right.
Depressive.
Depressed, but with like glitter ink.
Yes.
Yeah. She's funny. I didn't like that song when I first heard it, but now I'm like, I get it. It's a bop.
Same. Literally, TikTok will change my mind because people will use it for like videos, and I'm like, I like the song now, you know, because
Yeah.
they go to the part that is danceable or whatnot.
Yes. Exactly. It's funny how it happens. Anyway, that was a good conversation about Nick and Cell because I actually have a whole thing later on when we talk about predictions where I'm like, love triangle, but it made sense to talk about it here because it's gonna happen. No questions about it. If you've read any young adult book at this point, you see it coming a mile away. We saw it coming the moment Cell walked in with his shadow powers, right? We know these characters. We get it.
Stephanie Meyer, you raised us.
We are children of what you've done. You raised us. So they're in the lodge, so they're in this infirmary, and William, who is their healer, teaches Bree about the order's history and the powers that each of these families have on something called the Wall of Ages. Here we learn that each knight is awakened in order, and Arthur is the last of the knights to awaken, and is only awakened when Camlan, the Great War, starts. Arthur's knights are whittled down to 13, and Merlin cast a spell of eternity to make these knights the Round Table immortal. They're the Legendborn. Bree feels outside and cheated when she sees this long list of lineages. She sees this like tapestry and it goes down, and she sees where Arthur's goes down to Nick and all these other people. And she takes a moment here to feel very cheated of her own history, like coming from like a black family. She doesn't understand. She doesn't have her own lineage to go back to. And when I was reading this part, I felt very like similar. And we've talked about this even in our own episodes before, where we also sometimes can feel kind of some resentment being like children of immigrants for not being able to like know our own lineages. Like we have like our white friends, our American friends who are like, I am the ancestor of Benedict Arnold, which is not a good ancestry. I actually do know someone who has said this before, but I'm like, I would never know. I have no way of knowing. if I'm related to Benedict
Wow.
Arnold. Literally, someone from my high school was like, I'm related to Benedict Arnold. I'm like, I don't think that that's good, but but okay. But I just found that part very relatable, personally, this like feeling of resentment that she had. And I feel like I would too if I saw this just like long, like family tree, basically. Because we have no way of knowing. Like, well, I know both of us in our backgrounds. We have no way of knowing.
Yeah, I felt that too. Yeah. And I had a feeling it was going to go that direction when she was just like thinking of like looking at the map and thinking like she can't trace her lineage back. And there's aspects of this in like shows that I've seen. Like, so if anyone has seen Atlanta by like Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, there's an episode where he talks about that, where like a rich like philanthropist like talks to him about like, hey, like look at like everything I've gotten like for my travels here, this is from Africa, like which part of Africa are you from, you've never been? And he's like, your people erased that history or made it so I would never know that history. And so like it's a really sad but real aspect that like she's constantly being hit with while being at this college specifically. And so, yeah, to a degree, we can relate with like our background too, of just like, when specifically we brought this up a couple episodes back of like, if you ever do like ancestry.com or any of those like websites, like they don't have a lot of like information about people who aren't descendants of like the original people who came to the United States, the original immigrants of, I guess, Europe who came to the United States. There's a lot of information about them. So like it is sad to a degree, but
No, I think that's a good point. Yeah, it is like I just found that very relatable because it's just something we've experienced ourselves for different circumstances, and also partly also because of colonization. I mean, in Egypt, I know that colonization definitely impacted that, and it's just it's like just similar identities, I think. So that was nice to kind of feel seen to some extent in that moment. But what do we think that this says of her own lineage? Do we have any hypotheses of her lineage? Because I have some hypotheses about her lineage. And I think you don't talk about this in a book without being like, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So what do you think? Do you have any suspicions?
I felt that way too, like beyond like her ancestry, about beyond like being like a Black woman in America, not knowing your ancestry. Like I do think obviously there's like a lot she doesn't know about her mom, which comes up when we find out her mom had like, I forget what it's called, root power. So I just think like that it just keeps coming up. Like there's too much we don't know about her mom. And so that is like a central theme that I think is gonna affect. Like, oh, also, like the fact that she has like mage flame powers, and like apparently like only the most powerful people can have mage flame, the Merlins. That's important. And the fact that she's now connected to like literally King Arthur, I feel like that will play an effect as well.
Agreed. Yeah. I think she's like a descendant of someone. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised since this book talks about like race a lot and race is a big deal. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, oh, Arthur had slaves and impregnated a slave. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was like part of the story. That's my suspicion, but I don't know. We will see.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something along those lines because they're called like the
Yeah.
Legendborn. Like she's not a part of the Legendborn. Like she, I think, is a part of that ancestry somehow.
Yeah, I think she is too. Somehow, some way. And because she's Black, like they didn't consider that entire lineage of like Black people that he may have sired, for lack of a better word. And yeah, so I do think that that's going to be it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sad history, but yeah, like very true of like our founding fathers for the United States. Like,
yeah. It's very like realistic.
Mhm.
Sadly so. It's very realistic. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the case. But we will see.
That's a good hypothesis. Yeah.
Another hypothesis. We will see.
Another one.
Another one. We'll summarize all our hypotheses at the end of this. Because we got a lot of foreshadowing, I think. I think regardless, there's something with her lineage. If it's not that, there's something with her lineage. One important thing to note when we learn about this lineage and all of these different students and who they're related to, who they're the scion of, Merlin's spell is preserved in Arthur's spirit. So the spell of immortality, where all these people are the scions of this original order. It lives in Arthur's spirit, and his awakening puts the spell at risk. So if Arthur is called, and if he dies, the spell is broken. So then basically the entire Legendborn network basically completely dies. So it's a big deal when Arthur gets called. And Camlin is the final battle in which the historical Arthur fell. So that's what they call Camlin if he is called, because it's like a very big deal. Because if he dies, they all are screwed. And the last time Arthur was awakened was in 1775, aka the American Revolution. So it's been a very long time since Arthur was called, and Nick originally even, renounced his title. So him coming back now puts him at risk to some extent, and Bree feels a little bit of guilt around that. But clearly, it's a bad time to be Arthur. So we'll see what happens.
This is very similar to like in Avatar: The Last Airbender. If an avatar dies while in the avatar state, the lineage dies.
Yes.
And so it's somewhat similar. I thought that was interesting. Like there's high stakes. That's how she's adding. That's why she added this there. It's like high stakes. And like now with Camlin coming, ooh, everything's escalating very quickly.
Very quickly. Because of course it is. There would be no book plot if
Right.
there wasn't. Yeah, of course there is. But that's a good comparison. It's Avatar. I didn't think about that, but you're right. Very similar.
I do have thoughts about my next hypothesis for what's going to happen next. So the next person that I don't trust is William.
Oh, William. Okay, interesting. William is the scion of Gawain. I have that written down. I will be honest again, all these different people I have trouble also keeping in my head, but what makes you suspicious of him specifically? What happens?
So he's a healer. And healers, like if you like follow like I think like D&D or like fantasy, like healers are very important because like there's not many of them, and he has that healer power. And he also bears a lot of knowledge, it seems. Like I think he's older, perhaps. I don't know if he's a student. I think he's older. And I think like there will be something that comes down to that where like he either turns or he fights to preserve the lineages. Like he goes against maybe Bree at some point to preserve the Arthurian lineage. So I just don't trust him. I know he's very nice. My brain just kept saying like something's off about him, even though he's very nice right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm so stupid. I just realized, yeah, William is the healer. I was like, after I said I didn't know who he was, like, yeah, he's the healer. Duh. I just mentioned his name earlier. But I agree. I think that it's fair to say we should be suspicious of people in the order as a whole. I think it's okay to say that because there's clearly a lot of politics going on, and I think it's okay to have at least a little yellow flag, orange flags raising, wave those.
I think so. I agree. Like, and she's new to this world. And so it's like you can't really trust too many people. As she finds out like people who like are also like in her year, like think she's fighting her way to the top by like or cutting the line by like trying to seduce Nick. Like, yeah, you can't trust anyone.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of racism embedded in this group and a lot of politics that, yeah, exactly. I think we should be suspicious of a lot of them for sure. That's a good segue into the next part. So Bree leaves the lodge without seeing Nick, and she gets driven back to her dorm by Sarah. And she gets into this fight with Alice. She's like a little muddy and shaken. She just got attemptedly kidnapped by this yokel. Alice calls Bree's dad, who tells her she has to see a therapist, and that this therapist that he picked out for her knew her mom, and her name is Dr. Patricia Hartwood. Bree agrees, and she meets Patricia Hartwood in an arboretum, where Bree finds out that her mom was part of a spiritual tradition called rootcraft. You talked about this earlier. So basically, she learns that her mom had magic and partook in this rootcraft. But Bree didn't know about this, and Patricia is surprised that Bree did not know that her mom was a practitioner of rootcraft. She tells Patricia that she's aware of ether and uses that word specifically, which causes Patricia to have some pause. And she says that these are practitioners. The people that use that word are practitioners and are not her mother's people. Quote. I think that this brings in more race dynamics. And I think this talks a lot about, I think this just further proves our point of everything that we've been talking about. How do we think rootcraft is different from ether, and what do we think that this means for the larger, political experience of the book?
I wonder if this is related to, I'm forgetting the term, but they said like a certain group of Merlins broke off and they created like a different sect of Merlins. And I wonder if this is related to that, where it's like they have the same origins, but they are using magic essentially in a different way. I wonder if it's related to that at all, but if not, I just wonder if it's like in my brain, my first thought of like there's a lot of like homeopathic in the real world. Like homeopathy is like a way to like study without using medicine, like using natural like elements from the world to like heal yourself. Like that's what yoga's rooted in. Like there's natural remedies to things, and that's from like South Asia and Eastern Asia, and like it's frowned upon in Western countries for a lot of reasons. Some of it isn't accurate, but some of it could help people. And I wonder, that's what my brain thought of like this is rooted in like African roots, and like the Westerners, the colonizers, like have just like denounced it. The like Arthurian folks within this lineage have like denounced it for whatever reason. They've been told to not use it, but that's what it made me think of. And it's literally called like root magic, root craft. And so I was like, oh, there might be something here.
Yeah, no, I thought similar thing. I agree. It fits that historical precedent. So yeah, I agree with you. +1 retweet.
The history.
Retweet.
It has to be. I
History.
think this author, she does a really good job of like rooting this. I'm just gonna keep saying it, so to speak, in like real world like history and aspects. So
Yeah, I agree. It feels very realistic without being, obviously it's not realistic, but it's believable because these things we've experienced ourselves. We've experienced very similar things in our day-to-day. I agree. Very interesting. At the end of this, Patricia agrees to teach Bree about rootcraft, which is how this part ends, but there's still a lot of stuff that happens until then. So Bree gets invited back to the lodge for dinner, where she and Nick have a sweet romantic moment. This is, I think, where he like kisses her hands and stuff, and where, yeah, the suspicions are up. You're like, this relationship is not gonna last, if I had to guess, but we will see. And there she meets other female members of the order who are honestly blatantly racist and aggressive to her. One of these women thinks that she's the help and like asks her to go get her water or something crazy. She gets picked on by some of the other pages during this dinner, and honestly even gets called that she's there only for affirmative action and she's a cheat. And she nearly gets into a fight with one of the other pages named Vaughn. Here we learn about the Order of the Rose, which was created for women who can't page, scion, or squire. Only recently were some women allowed to take these roles, and in the past, Nick says that they were used to eliminate daughters to force their bloodline to have male heirs. So that's what this woman that was very aggressive to her was from, these elitist women. But also, not surprising that they would kill their daughters, Again, rooted in some element of realism, unfortunately.
infemicide.
Yeah,
Not
awful.
cool.
No, not cool. You heard it here, folks. Like, you heard it here. And again, like these micro like racial aggressions, micro and macro, honestly, full on racial aggressions feel very rooted in reality. And I think like the author just does a good job of, I think, helping us understand that experience in a very realistic way, unfortunately, even though this is in a fantasy setting. So here we also learn during the dinner, Nick's father is speaking. He tells us that attacks are escalating and more knights are being called. So they're accelerating the trials to start sooner than expected. And they will be starting that first trial tonight. Bree starts that trial and she's paired with Cindy, another page, where they have to move these mannequins from one side of a cleared field to another while avoiding these hellbores that Cell makes from his ether. And only 4 out of the 6 teams make it to the first round. So 2 teams are eliminated by the end of this. This was the main action sequence of the book so far. I mean, we've had these like mini attacks, but this was like this was the first trial, the first big like set piece, I guess. How did we feel about this like writing, this experience? How did you feel about it?
I wonder if we think similarly, because that came out of nowhere. She's just like suddenly in the Hunger Games, and at least in the Hunger Games they trained. they like
Yeah.
practiced. No one set her up to like we don't know that she knows how to climb trees or use any weapons. Like if you or I just were dropped into this, no offense, Olivia, but I think we'd both die
Oh
immediately.
yeah.
Like we'd both
No
be
offense.
injured, and like I could maybe run and I wouldn't win because I can't carry the 150-pound bag per like we have no context for like her physicality in this. So
Yeah.
that
They literally just like had dinner and then they're like, okay, here's a trial now. And you're like, what the? I just ate. You get cramps if you try to work. I get cramps if I try to work out right after I ate. Like this is not good.
and she's like says no fear, like she has like no fear, she's not like voicing it to us, and you know
No.
what I mean. I expected her to be like, what's happening, wait, what, right now, and like
Yeah.
asking Nick a billion questions, but no, instead he just kisses her knuckles, said, all right, good luck.
Good luck. Just kisses her knuckles. I love that. It's true. Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I agree. But yeah, it's like similar to Hunger Games. These like the trial thing is a very common fantasy book plot device. But I just felt like, yeah, it came out of nowhere and a little bit like, oh, okay, we're done with the first one. All right, I did not expect that. So just kind of a little bit odd timing. Here, Nick's dad, this is where Dick's dad mentions the sightings of the line of Morgan. So this is what you were talking about earlier when they're talking about the attacks are escalating. And specifically, the line of Morgan is the second enemy of regents. The first is the Shadowborn. The Morgan line is composed of Merlins who splintered off from the Order of the Round Table, which is why rogue ether users were outlawed. So I do think, like you were saying, this could be the root crafters. Most likely.
I hope so. I'm already rooting for them. I
Me
got so
too.
excited when I read that. I'm like, me too, I'd rather be a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can safely say, I think that's a good, we'll have to, again, summarize all our guesses, but I think that that's a pretty safe guess at this point. We will see. Okay, moving on. After the first trial, another snake demon attacks Nick, and Sel eventually saves him, and Bree ends up spending the night in Nick's room, where they finally share a kiss the next morning, and he walks her back to their dorm. So this is where their romance finally blossoms. But these people keep attacking Nick. Demons keep attacking Nick. Is it because he's just the scion of King Arthur, or if there's more to it? We don't know.
They are letting him just walk around when he's very important to this whole system. Like he keeps getting attacked. It's like day 2.
Yeah, he's gotten kidnapped almost twice, and they're just like, okay, just go to class.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Bree walks to meet Patricia in the old Chapel Hill Cemetery, and they sit, and Patricia sets out these crystals, this food and tea, and she explains that these are offerings for her ancestors. And Bree tells Patricia she doesn't know the women on her mom's side of her family because of slavery, and she doesn't understand how she could be connected to her ancestors, even though Patricia is. And here they also learn about the metaphysics of root. It's the ancestors who must share root with the living, and the living only borrow root for a period of time when they practice and when they call upon it. So Patricia shows her how to use this. They hold hands and they begin to practice root, and they disappear into a memory. And that's where the first part ends. So I think it's interesting, one, again, that Bree doesn't know her ancestry. Going to come up. Her ancestry is clearly a big deal. And this idea of root, borrowing root, I think is interesting. Something that they have like a respect for versus ether. What do they do with ether? Do they just steal? I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. The word
Suspicious.
borrow. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Patricia made it a big point to be like, it's the ancestors who share the root with the living. They do not own it. But ether is not described this way at all. So I think there's just a different level of respect for this power, I think, between these two groups, which I suspect will also play a part.
It's more communal. Ooh, I like how she did that.
Yeah, very interesting. And that's the end of part 2. A lot happens. A lot happens. So how do we summarize all our predictions? Number 1, Bree has some Arthurian lineage, my prediction. 2, her mother is from the line of Morgan or something. The roof crafters are the line of Morgan, most likely. 3, there's a Cell, Bree, Nick, love triangle coming. That's coming. We don't know how, we don't know when, but it's coming.
4, I think that Nick is going to betray Bree, or is at least using Bree currently because he wants her somehow to help his mom remember him. And then
Good one.
5
That's a great one.
was, I believe, we don't trust William. At least I don't trust William. Trust no one, but I think specifically William will play a big part just because I think he just is too powerful in this group as the healer, and he knows a lot about this group, and I think he's loyal to this group.
It's fair. I agree. That's a lot. We have a lot of predictions. So we will see. We will see.
Yeah. Keep
Suspicious.
listening.
Yeah, keep listening. Okay. That's that. That's the end of part 2. How do you rate this book still at this point?
Ooh, out of we can do like the out of 5. It's between like a 3.5 to a 5 for me. Yeah. I think like there's some aspects that I wish were fixed with like that we described with the fighting and like the Hunger Games style. I think it's doing a lot right now. And I think it will even out. It's like a lot because we just started.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping because it's 3 books now, like it's about the marathon with this book.
Yes.
What about you?
Yeah, I would give it like a 3.5 right now. I'm not like incredibly invested, but I am invested enough to keep reading. And I think the politics of it is interesting. I think it's like it's the race politics is something I've never really engaged with in a fantasy novel, so I think that's going to be very interesting. And it is already interesting. So, yeah, I'm giving it a 3.5 right now.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
It is very unique in that sense that it
Yeah.
combines like race and politics and like real world themes into this. So that is really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much for listening to part 2 of our Legendborn read along. We would love for you to keep listening to our subsequent episodes. Although next week we're taking a break from the Legendborn parts. We're going to be doing Bridgerton, the first part of Bridgerton, because they're dropping it in multiple parts. So we're going to be doing Bridgerton part 1. And then we'll be later talking about Bridgerton part 2 when that's released, I think in like June or July. So stay tuned for that. Follow us on all the platforms. We're fangirlfeelspod. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other streaming platforms. We'd also love for you to let us know if you want to be a part of the live discussion for part 4 of Legendborn, which we're hoping to have during the first week of June, but TBD, we'll discuss. If we don't get enough interest, we might just talk about it ourselves, or we'll like wait until we get more interest. So keep in touch. Stay tuned. But until next week, Olivia, we're going to say goodbye.
Bye. Bye.